Hello everyone and welcome to the program Midday Discourse on Global Television. I am Samuel Odi. Many thanks for joining on today's edition of the program. Today we'll be having a conversation around the deregulation of of downstream oil sector, and we'll just be bringing you up to speed with what's going on within that sector. The regulation of downstream oil sector in Nigeria involves removing government control, allowing private sector participation in refining, supply and distribution of petrol products. This means the licensed private companies will handle everything from refining crude to distributing and retailing petroleum products, including managing infrastructure like pipelines, depots, and as well as terminals. So they are key aspects to the regulation, total removal of government control, and also fixing there no more subsidies, no oil price fixing by the government. Then private sector participation companies will invest in refining, supply and distribution, as well as increase in efficiency. Competition among private companies will improve service and reduce costs. Then we'll also look at other angle of the conversation, which is around economic growth, and deregulation can attract foreign investment and create jobs. So that is what is key currently for Nigerian economy. We can also look at other sectors of social and also environmental factors that can contribute to all of this regulation of the downstream sector. And also we'll look at the impact. We'll be dwelling more on the impact and see the trajectory of when government was in power, fully in control of the oil sector, and then what we can expect when we have private individuals, private companies and foreign stakeholders invest more in the sector. And then having this conversation today would get keynote on the advancements and how Nigerians will be able to enjoy oil, given the fact of the current price and then the effect that it has caused on food items and general way of living for humans in terms of transportation and every other sector that has to do with it. SMEs are closing shop because of they can't keep up with prices of things in the market, as well as increment in fuel price, tariff hike, all of that affecting the day-to-day life of all Nigerians. So on today's edition we'll be explaining all of that, and I have a guest who will be joining me who is actually in the studios, but we'll be going on a very quick break, and then when we return back we will dive in right into the conversation of the impact of downstream sector regulation. Do stay with us, we'll be right back. Many thanks for staying with us. If you're just joining, this is Midday Discourse, and we're about to x-ray the impact of downstream regulation that is, being assessed. I have a guest who is live in the studio with me. He is the national coordinator, or you could call him the president of No You Too Young to Perform in Nigeria. Good afternoon, Mr. Ezema James. Thank you so much for joining on today's edition of the program.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yes, so when you heard about the regulation of the oil sector, downstream rather, what was your reactions to it?
Well, the regulation is a very good policy. You know, it's a very good policy, and I think I don't think was anyone that did not embrace this the idea of deregulation, because of our dependence on oil. It has been one of the major problems of our economy. So because our economy is largely dependent on oil, it became a kind of a mono economy, and it has not been an easy one for us, because anything that happens to the oil prices, we saw it all these years, that once there's any impact on the oil prices, it affects us negatively or positively. In other words, the prices of oil in the international market is what now determine our well-being or otherwise as citizens and as a country. So because of it, we you know, everyone who understood what was going on within the economy appreciated the fact that deregulation is something that is good enough for us if we must move forward as a nation. But you know, in all this period of trying to carry out the deregulation, you know, there was a time that we talked about, they were talking in the short term, gradual deregulation, and then later on in the middle term, we are talking about you know, rehabilitating the refineries and trying to get refineries on board. And these are the things that were supposed to be on board before we can go for full deregulation and the final removal of subsidy. But unfortunately, we did not, we started implementing the long-term aspect of it, which has to do with total regulation, removal of subsidy. And we are all feeling the impact today. We are feeling the impact today, and that is how it is today, that is one of those things that we have in this country, that implementation of policies has always been the problem, not just the policy. The policies has always been okay, but the actual implementation of that policy is where we always have problem in Nigeria, and that is as a result of bad governance. So once we have a well-articulated policy that is well implemented, the result will be a better life for the ordinary citizen. And once there is no, you know, once a policy does not give a better life for the ordinary citizen, you know that the policy is a bad one, or is the one that is not properly implemented. So and in this case, the policy was not properly implemented, and that is what we are seeing at the moment.
Do you think the regulation needs to have taken place before the removal of fuel subsidy?
Now, it is a process. The regulation is a process. Yeah, it's a process, and it was not supposed to be something that will remove fuel subsidy totally without us actually having functional state-owned refineries. Because or even if you are depending on the, even assuming we have a lot of privately owned refineries, you will still, we are supposed to have a state-owned refineries that will, in case these people want to play the monopoly and want to control the market, the state will be able to, you know, use their own products from their own refinery to cushion whatever impact it was supposed to have on the citizen. But today, the reverse is the case, that all we have today is the Dangote refinery, which is from every indication is being you know, strangulated, so to say, to the extent that even the Aliko Dangote himself had to, you know, come out at a point to voice out and say, look, this thing is getting to, in fact, at a point he said that they should buy off the refinery and things like that. So that was the level of frustration that was in there. So we are looking at a situation whereby now that we have gotten to this level, and the government is saying that there is no going back, good and fine, but we need to look at ways of making life better for the ordinary citizen in terms of cushioning the impact of this sudden removal of subsidy without preparation, because we didn't prepare for it, and here it has come, and the impact is what we see today: hunger, protests everywhere, and things like that. Despite the way the government tries to manage it, the truth of it is that the life of the average citizen is negatively impacted by this policy. So the government should also look at ways of cushioning the effect of this policy too, so that every citizen, like recently the media this guild of is a guild of editors and all those ones. They were talking about giving the policy a human face and things like that. So it is something that we need to do, so that at the end of the day, the people will not unduly suffer because of some of these policies.
Okay, looking at, you made mention of refineries, and we've heard lots of stories about those refineries, the one in Kaduna, the one in Warri, and as well as the one in Port Harcourt. We've heard promises, that it's going to get working in a couple of months, in a couple of weeks. We've been hearing stories like that, right? But now, still, billions of Nigerian taxpayers' money has been invested into all of this, and then we are yet to see results. Do you think with Dangote Refinery now and this regulation and the fact that Ipman have been able to, have an agreement with Dangote Refinery that products will be lifted locally and from marketers will be lifted from his refinery directly, do you think it's going to help with the form of regulation, given the fact that the government will not be having much power over what really happens in the oil sector if this regulation gets through?
Yes, that's why I was looking at it that we are implementing a policy that was well crafted but not well implemented. Because before now we are supposed to have things like some of these policies,
yes,
that could have cushioned the impact of this.
The fuel subsidy removal.
Yes, the fuel subsidy, like having the refineries operational.
Yes.
You were talking about millions of naira that were invested in these refineries. And it is not just that these taxpayers' money. It also the money were borrowed, yes, also to invest in this in these same refineries, and unfortunately we have had several deadlines that were given for it to come up on stream, but yes, it has not come up, and it has become a big embarrassment to us as a country, as a nation, as oil producing nation. As a matter of fact, I think 14th largest oil producing nation in the world, yes, and we cannot proudly say that we have a state-owned refinery that is functional. Is a big problem, and that is what you are seeing reflecting in the market today, because there's only one refinery that is operational, and that's the Dangote refinery, which is privately owned. And you see that all the interests that were playing out about the pricing, because it's just one source. So if you are able to control that source, you will also be able to control the market and things like that. And that is what we should not have come to at this point in time. We are not supposed to come to this point where only one source will be the supplier of this refined product, and is actually reflecting in the reason why we initially had to have some queues at some filling stations and things like that. And also the pricing up to today, we don't know actually how much the price is going to be, because everything has been speculation. On the NNPC side, there is no clear-cut idea price that we can say, because price keep changing on daily basis, so you cannot actually say that this is how the price is going to be. And that is one of the major reasons that Nigeria is seriously at a crossroad as far as this deregulation of the oil sector is concerned. Okay,
well, we'll be having more conversation around those lights, but we'll be going on a very quick break, and then when we return back, Midday Discourse continues. Kindly stay with us. Yes, many thanks for staying with us. If you're just joining, this is Midday Discourse. I am Samuel Odi, and I have my guest here, Mr. James Ezema, who is here with me in the studio. Yes, Mr. James, let's look at this other angle of the conversation. It's been alleged that high level of corruption is going on within the oil sector. And do you think with this the regulation coming in to play, do you think it's going to help cushion that?
You see, as what we have seen right now is that there's a big cartel that controls the oil industry, and that is just the truth of the matter. That is what is very, very evident in what we can see since this coming on board of the Dangote refinery. So this big cartel has continued to control the activities within the oil industry, and little wonder that industry has been one of the most secretive industry that we have had in the history of our country. So there's no way in that kind of situation you will not have to deal with the issue of corruption. But corruption is endemic in every aspect of the life of our nation, in the sense that most times people don't want their dirty deals to be exposed. And once people come on board to expose whatever dirty deals they are having, you will see, the situations where they have to fight back one way or the other. And that is the reason why the country is not making progress the way it's supposed to make progress. And corruption is something that we can not be able to allow to remain within that industry. Because if corruption continues the way it is, I don't think we will reap the benefit of a deregulated downstream sector. Because Nigerians are the ones that will be at the receiving end. If that industry is working as it's supposed, if the downstream sector is as it's supposed to be, will be no need for a citizen to be crying about this thing that we call hunger. Because one of the reasons that we are talking about deregulation, government embraced deregulation, was because it was going to create jobs. Now, there are no jobs created, because some of the players in the industry are still trying to control the market, trying to control how things are done, try to control the activities that go on in the oil sector. And that is one of the reasons why you see that people, despite all the effort the government is making, people are still shouting and crying that there is no jobs, there is no job. See, these jobs cannot come from the air. These jobs has to be created through deliberate policies of government, which, like in this case, this deregulation policy is supposed to have been creating jobs for us. But how many jobs have this created? Now, ordinarily, there are chains of distribution. There are people that will be working, but we can tell that within this period how many independent petroleum stations were shut down. Then you will talk of the hundreds and thousands of people who work in that industry. You know that they were out of job within that period. So they will now have to go back and depend on their families, depend on friends, to survive within this period, those periods that the independent marketers were not selling. So as they shut their stations, what are you going to do about it? The thing is that you have to go home as a worker. So and go and wait until any day they call you back. Yes. You will now resume. And these are the things that we are talking about. If government is running some of these policies and implementing them the way they ought to be implemented, we will not be having some of these bottlenecks and some of these who and cry that go with some of this deregulation and some of these policies. Nigeria is such a lucky country that we don't have natural disasters, we don't have any of some of all those things, but most of the time you see that our problems are just man-made problems that we create by ourselves, due to our interest as individuals, due to our interest as organizations, due to our interest as people who serve the public. So that is the reason why some of us have been asking that, let there be a thorough probe of that industry, so that at the end of the day, you will be able to know what is actually going on. Because all we talk about is that there's corruption, but the government have not summoned courage to, probe that industry and let us know. For instance, this we don't even know what quantity of petrol that we consume in Nigeria. The PMS that we consume in Nigeria, we cannot actually put our hand and say this is the quantity, the exact number of liters that we consume in a day domestically. So, and that is one of the problems that we are having. If, assuming that we can now put our hand and say, okay, we consume XYZ number of liters per day, then it will even help some of these refineries to understand how they are going to, either upgrade their systems or work and ensure that they meet up this local but everything is based on assumption.
Yes.
Yeah, everything is based on. We saw Aliko Dangote, when I saw one of his videos when he was talking about the cartels that are in the oil industry. He's talking about them that they were even worse than the cabal that we're talking about in government. So these are the issues that we should be looking at. Let government have that political will to come to deal with the issue of corruption and manipulation that go on within the downstream sector, so that the economy will be better for it. Unless we do that, there's nothing the country or even the individual citizens are going to gain from this deregulation.
Looking at the angle from Dangote now being a privately owned refinery, and other refineries that we have, do you think if the sector gets fully regulated, do you think private investors is going to do better in terms of creating more jobs, better than what the government has done or coming from the years before now?
You see, globally,
yes,
the government doesn't create limited job. That is the fact of it. Because how many people can the government employ? Just like when they were talking about minimum wage and all that. I used to tell people, I said, look, how many people are in government employment? How many? There are very few people compared to the population of the people. Out of
over 200,
probably
200 million.
Over 200 million people,
yes,
who are citizens of this country, how many percentage of that population have been employed over the years by the government? You discover that it's very few, compared to what is the private sector. Creating an environment for the private sector to thrive is what will create jobs that we lack in Nigeria. Both the issue of unemployment, the issue of underemployment, and loss of jobs, and job security and all those things cannot happen unless these are things that can be addressed by this private sector participation in the economy. So if we continue to run our affairs the way we do, I'm afraid I don't think there's anything we are going to do to better the life of the ordinary citizen. People will continue to complain of the same thing. One of the days someone was talking about he's now 30 years and he was still hearing about food, water, and light and things like that. No electricity, no food, no water. That I said, well, there was a time that we had some government that was in place that were talking about food for all by the year 2000, health for all by the year 2000, and it was as if the year 2000 was not going to comfort. And today we are about 24 years behind, and anything has changed, properly, so to say. So, and these are the things that we are talking about. So the government should summon the courage to shake up that industry, probe the industry, deal with the issue of corruption within the downstream sector, and let us. And now we are even talking about the distribution of fuel. Yes. But what of the extraction? How the government cannot say that this is the quantity of oil, the barrels of oil that were extracted, because the government does not have a way to measure it. It's only some of those industry players that are the ones that give reports to the government and say, look, we have extracted 20 barrels of oil today. And the government does not have any way to cross-check these facts to know whether actually it was that quantity that was extracted or is more than that 20 barrels per day. So these are the things that we are talking about, that the government needs to actually deal with issues that surround that oil industry, because there's a lot of secrecy that surround that oil industry that we need to deal with, because these are the things that breed the corruption that we see in the downstream sector.
You know, looking at those angles about the barrels of oil that are being generated on a daily basis, you know, it's been said by OPEC that they're looking to, you know, produce 2 to 2.3 million barrels per day on a daily basis. But looking at the trajectory now, the highest that they've been doing since, it has been from 1.5 million to 1.9, not even hit a 2 million mark. But talking about managing and, you know, looking at those angles, how can, you know, the government now phase out subsidies and price control, given the fact that the moment this downstream sector gets fully regulated, the government wouldn't have power over subsidy removal or emplacement, and also control the pricing. So now, what do Nigerians stand to benefit if this downstream sector gets fully regulated? Do you think there will be a change in price?
Certainly. You see, one of the good thing about the regulation is that the price will never remain high. Let's take the telecom industry, for instance.
Yes,
even though the telecom industry in Nigeria still remains the most expensive in the world, but at least we started from when we were paying 15 naira per minute, and at that time some of the telecom operators told us that per minute billing was impossible in Nigeria.
Yes.
And over time we have seen that because of the competition, because that's why I was talking about having only one source of supply,
yes,
which is not enough for the country. Now in the network operators, we have different about at least 4 or 5 of them who are working, and you can now see that over time competition brought down the price.
At some point a SIM card was sold for around 100,000,
yes,
and
so, now you can get SIM card for free.
Yes,
the same SIM card that was sold at high
at
cost
100,000, 50, 80 years.
Yes. So you can now get it free of charge.
Yes.
And that is what we're talking about, competition. But if, assuming there was no competition, assuming we continued with a monopoly, at the end of the day, what would have happened is that we would have still remained where we were in those days, because the people who are the players within that industry will continue to control the price and continue to determine how much where Nigerians are going to buy these SIM cards, because they are the only one that will be bringing them out. But for the fact that there is no monopoly in the industry, today we are better for it.
Yes.
And that is what we are talking about in the oil industry. If the downstream has to be fully deregulated, the government should hands off the industry and allow the private sector to collect. You know, Dangote refinery is not the only refinery that is licensed.
Yes.
Even under Obasanjo administration, some refineries were licensed, but because of these bottlenecks, they were never allowed to come even to get established in the first place, because there are so many interests that will not want the regulation to take place, because they are benefiting from what is happening. You know, today you will be wondering, how will an imported fuel be cheaper than locally refined fuel? It does not make sense, because we have this crude oil here in Nigeria.
Yes.
And if I were the president, I can even decide to give Dangote the price of this crude oil at half
instead
price,
of the normal price.
Instead of the normal price.
Why should
he
be
buying at the international market? While in the recent way, these are the things that we get from our backyard here. And you will now be asking yourself, an imported petroleum product will be cheaper for us after undergoing all the transportation, all the freight costs and things like that. You will now come here and now take, and then you will now come again, you pay for storage and all the rest of them.
Yes.
Now we're talking about a locally refined petrol being more expensive. It does not, it beats imagination. In
Yes.
fact, the world will be looking at us whether there is something really not okay with the system that we operate here, because there's no way anybody can justify that a locally produced product will be more expensive than imported one. It's not possible.
Yes, well, looking at those angles now, the Naira for Crude initiative actually started, like, let's say a month ago, where the president said you have to buy crude locally here in Nigeria for Naira. That means that's why that was implemented, was so as Nigerians will be able, or those marketers will get the initiative was just for Nigerian Naira to gain more momentum. But having that conversation now, do you think it's because of the alleged corruption going on within the sector that is the main reason why we've not seen the refineries in Kaduna, Warri and Port Harcourt actually active, despite so many promises from the NNPCL?
You see, the reason is not far from the issue of corruption,
yes,
and then special interest about what people are gaining from imported petroleum products, and that is the reason why they stampeded the Dangote refinery into boxing them to a corner, to the point that they are now the one deciding. I remember that there was a time that even the Dangote was talking that it's the government that will now decide on the pricing that is going to. It doesn't. Is it the government that is deciding the price of sugar that he is producing? Is this the government that is deciding the price of noodles that is producing? Is this the government that is deciding the price of salt that is producing? So these are why should it be that the government will be deciding the price of the petroleum products that will be coming out of Dangote refinery? It does not make any reasonable sense that the government that does not decide the price of other products that the Dangote group are producing will now be the one to now come and be deciding the price of the petroleum products that will be coming from. So it's just about the manipulation within the industry, and some people who don't want things to go the way it should go because of what they are benefiting, and that is the reason why we have this trouble and this problem and all the brouhaha that has followed this the launch of the Dangote production. So it is a very big shame for us as a country that we are experiencing this kind of thing when we are oil producers. There's no oil producing country that is suffering the kind of things we are suffering here in Nigeria because of oil. No, none. I don't see anyone that is suffering the same thing.
Well, looking at this other angle of the conversation, the NNPCL and the Dangote refinery have signed a 10-year deal for the NNPCL to supply Dangote refinery gas, right? So hoping with that now Nigerians will be able to get a purchasing power. But talking about those angles now, yes, if this fully you have a thought for what I just said.
You see, some of these things is that these people have a way of elevating the discussion,
yes,
or diverting our attention to something else. We're talking of the price of the one that we already have,
that we have on ground.
And we are talking about another issue entirely. No, let us deal with this one, that the price of a refined fuel in Nigeria is now more expensive than the imported one. Let's deal with it. You were talking about crude for Naira
yes,
policy, which is a good policy.
Yes.
But for me, the beyond that,
yes,
the federal government should actually reduce even the price of crude that they are supplied to Dangote, so that the price of refined product will be cheaper. It will save us. It will save us the stress of looking for foreign exchange for so many for things that has to do with the petroleum industry. Like if Dangote is getting this crude in Naira, and they are selling in Naira to the independent marketers,
yes,
who will be looking for $1 to go and buy petroleum products? There's nobody. At least the foreign exchange that we are getting, we can be channeling them towards other sectors of the economy, yes, instead of us continually depending on dollar to buy the product that we sold.
Yes.
We sold in dollar to the international market.
Yes.
We now go to the international market, probably have to gather more dollars than we got from the sales to buy imported, refined product. And how can the economy survive that way? It's not possible.
Okay. Well, okay, let's talk about the regulation. I know, looking at those angles now, it's going to be dire, and it's going to like cut down on purchasing power. But with the full regulation now, hopefully coming into place, do you think it's going to increase the potential for the purchasing power of citizens in Nigeria?
The purchasing power of the citizen will depend on or some other factors. It will not only be solely dependent on the what happens in the oil industry.
Yes.
But what it is that the oil industry seems to have impact on every other sector of the economy, because if you look at it, the moment the price of petroleum products increased, the cost of transportation increased, and then the cost of goods and services increased.
Yes.
So this has a chain effect, and once you are able to get this the regulation right, and we are having cheaper products, just as we are having cheaper telecommunication services than when they started.
Yes.
And even a better service now than when they started. I remember in those days when the telecom industry came on board in the year 2001, 2002, you will see that you will make 1 minute call before you could say hello, the line has dropped. Because and then 1 minute is charged.
Yes.
Because they say they can't give us per second billing. No. So these are the things we are talking about. So if this the regulation in the downstream sector is something that is properly implemented, we are going to have a better economy. We are going to have the higher purchasing power, because once the price of the liter of petrol is down, then we are going to have people will now have to, instead of carrying all the money that they have made to go and buy fuel, they will have some money to buy other things. And some of these transporters, I've interacted with a lot of transporters.
Yes.
And you see, there's one thing they complain. They say when they were buying fuel at 150 naira, they were making more money than now, even though they were charging smaller amounts.
Yes.
Because now you will charge high amount, and at the end of the day, you go to the filling station, you offload the entire earning into there, and you will now go and continue. One person told me a story one day. He said he bought a fuel, bought petrol for 13,000.
Yes.
And then he ran to Mararaba, back to Wuse, Mararaba, back to Wuse, the fuel finished, and he was able to make 15,000. So and then he had to buy another 10,000. So these are the things. So you have not talked about maintenance of the vehicle. You have not done. So they are actually lamenting as it is, and this thing also have that spiral effect of killing that industry too. Because if we don't take time, that people who are employed within that industry, who are mostly self-employed, they will be out of jobs. And if they're out of jobs, they will now add to the unemployment problem we're having in Nigeria. And that's where the problem is. Because the government is dealing with this issue as if it's just about the price, about the price. It's about other chains that are related to this pricing.
Yes.
Because if you deal with it properly and we have a cheaper product, the whole economy will benefit from it.
Okay, let's look at this. Still on the regulation of the oil sector, right? So if we're looking at those effects now, if it does happen, we're expected to see a high level of competition, other private investors coming in. So how can this develop, and then how can the rural areas be able to benefit in terms of social responsibility theory?
Now, you see one of the major challenges is this. There were some people that have refinery licenses to build refineries, and some of them have seen what the Dangote refinery has gone through. How do you expect them to now continue to invest in that sector. Because if you invest and you are being strangulated, how do you expect that you are? Because one of the essence of this deregulation is to attract investment in that sector.
Okay.
And now somebody has invested in that sector, and is government bottlenecks are coming up here and there, you know, making things more difficult for the operator, for him to, you know, for the company to be able to, you know,
stand on its feet.
Yes, do the things that they need to do. Why do you want to control a company that you did not invest in? Even if you invested and you don't have a majority share, you cannot control the company. It's the people that have majority share in a company that can control a particular company. We remember all the things that happened, that there was a time that the government was saying that they are going to get 20% stake in Dangote refinery, but eventually it was 7-point-something% that was paid for, and we were never told until this trouble came, and we were now started hearing no, they did not pay. Meanwhile, the government of the day at the time, the Muhammad Buhari administration, had already said that after a federal executive council meeting, they said, okay, we are giving out XYZ money for the 20% stake, and it was approved. And at the end of the day, you will now hear that it was 7.8% or thereabout that was actually purchased. So what happened? No explanation, and up till now there's no explanation, and that is why we are talking about the best thing to do is to carry out a total probe of the downstream, so that we will now know exactly what is transpiring and we know how to go forward.
Okay, talking about going forward now, as we wrap up today's edition of the program, what's your own take, and then what advice can you give to the downstream sector on the approaches to take if they get fully regulated?
Well, the only advice can only go to the government.
Okay.
Because it is not the private sector that is the problem here. It is the government.
Okay.
I think the government should hands off this sector. If they want to deregulate,
yes,
let them hands off the downstream. Because you cannot be you cannot be playing the role of a regulator and also a competitor.
Okay.
You know, because the government through the NNPC is also selling petrol. And because you are selling petrol, you are also competing with these independent marketers. And because you are the ones that, and you now want the independent marketers to come and buy Dangote refined petrol through you as a competitor. Now, how do you expect them to survive? And that was one of the reasons we had all these problems that we have.
Because everybody is in business for profit.
Everybody is in business for profit. And you are in business for profit, I'm in business for profit. You now say, I should come and buy from you. You are playing the middleman's role when I should have access to. That's why when this agreement was recently signed with the Dangote refinery by the independent marketers, they were saying that, look, that there will be a cheaper price. The price will be cheaper, even though they have not told us how much.
No, we are witnessing now currently offshore buying directly, tankers now buying directly from Dangote refinery are purchasing at the rate of 997 naira instead of 990 naira. So now we are witnessing a 15 naira, right? Yes, a little bit of discount. So,
but even at that, it's still expensive. I believe that probably by the time that the Dangote refinery has gotten total control of the market, they comes up fully. We will now know what we are going to do. But as it is now, we will continue to hold government accountable for what is happening in the oil industry.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Ezema James, for joining us on today's edition of Midday Discourse.
Thank you.
Yes, and that is how much time will permit us to take on today's edition of Midday Discourse. The full regulation of the downstream sector would help not just the independent marketers, but Nigerians generally will tend to benefit, because hopefully if that does happen, the government will no longer have power when it comes to subsidy and then pricing. We are hoping to get a very, very affordable, Nigerians are hoping to get affordable price for PMS, which is popularly known as petrol in filling stations. That's how much time will permit us to take on today's edition of Midday Discourse. My name is Samuel Odi. You have an amazing day ahead. I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye for now.